June is Pride Month, and contrarian that I am, I decided to go to the American town that, growing up, I associated most with hating people like me. I'm in Laramie, Wyoming. You may have heard of it. In 1998, gay representation in the media was having a moment.
Susan, I'm gay.
Ellen DeGeneres had come out the year before. Will and Grace premiered on NBC. There was a general sense that the gay rights movement had moved towards the mainstream and was making real progress. And then something horrific happened.
Matt Shepard, the gay college student savagely beaten last week in Wyoming, died this morning.
The murder of 21-year-old Matthew Shepard in Laramie, Wyoming, shocked the country.
22-year-old Aaron James McKinney and 21-year-old Russell Arthur Henderson will now be charged with murder in the first degree.
The details of his killing were brutal. He'd been pistol-whipped 18 times, tied to a wooden fence, and left to die. His primary attacker's defense? Matthew had tried to seduce him.
McKinney and Henderson were approached by Shepard, who is gay, at a local bar. Offended, they allegedly decided to rob him by also pretending to be gay and luring Shepard to their truck.
It seemed obvious to everyone that the killing was a hate crime. Matthew Shepard had been killed for being gay. And Matthew became a symbol, one that launched vigils, charities, statements, and dedications. As New York Representative Sean Patrick Maloney put it, Matthew Shepard is to gay rights what Emmett Till was to the civil rights movement.
I'm with a theater company, and we're writing a play about Laramie and the Matthew Shepard incident.
Why are you doing that?
Well, we think it's a story that...
Well, you're sticking your nose into something we don't need to talk about anymore. That's over and done.
A popular play, The Laramie Project, later adapted as a film for HBO, solidified Laramie's brand in the popular imagination, all but synonymizing the town with homophobia. I was 14 when Matthew Shepard was killed, and his murder seemed to reflect a hard truth, that in the heartland of America, being gay could get you killed. Several months after the murder, I would come out of the closet myself, and it was not lost on me how lucky I was to be growing up in New York City, and not some benighted town like Laramie, Wyoming. But then we got some new information. Several journalists, led by Stephen Jimenez, went looking for the truth. And what they discovered upended everything we thought we knew about Matthew Shepard.
Matt wasn't killed because he was gay. He was killed because those guys were strung out and hadn't slept for days.
This indeed was a drug deal gone wrong rather than a crime of passion.
Yet 26 years after this crime, Jimenez's revelations are still not widely known. Why, I wonder, does the original story still have so much force? And what impact has it had on the people of Laramie, gay and otherwise?
They wanted to make Laramie evil. And they've done a good job of it. Because there's a lot of people that think Laramie's a terrible place. And they're afraid to come here, which is really sad.
One of the biggest ironies of the Matthew Shepard story is that Laramie, home to the University of Wyoming, is one of the most liberal cities in the state. Founded in 1868 as a stop on the Union Pacific Railroad, it's part college town, part Old West.
Hello.
When I arrived in town, I met up with Detective Benjamin Fritzen. Can I take my shoes off?
Absolutely.
Oh, terrific.
Make yourself comfortable.
Thank you.
At the time of the case, I was a detective on the Laramie Police Department.
You've said that this case was not about homophobia. So if it wasn't about homophobia, what was it about?
It was about methamphetamine and, the money behind it, and Aaron trying to get his hands on more of it.
In 2004, Stephen Jimenez produced the first report that complicated the hate crime narrative around Matthew Shepard's death. He went on to spend years researching and in 2013 published The Book of Matt, an authoritative history of the murder. When I asked Stephen Jimenez about his findings, he told me that the idea that Matthew and his killer, Aaron McKinney, were strangers was a misconception.
Aaron McKinney had a relationship with Matthew. They were both involved with methamphetamine. Aaron in particular had been addicted for 3 years. He was dealing and Aaron was deep into it. Matthew had also dabbled quite a bit with methamphetamine, and there was pre-existing conflict with Matt and Aaron. Aaron was trying to persuade Matt into advancing him some drugs, and Aaron would pay him the money later. And Matt wouldn't do it. Matt wanted the money, or he wouldn't give him the drugs. So Aaron was pissed off. And that's not the first time Aaron got pissed off at Matt. I interviewed many people who were associates of both of them that had socialized together. And there's no doubt in my mind, because when over a dozen sources say, we were at parties together, we were at parties at, certain people's houses, we were at parties at Matt's apartment.
They all partied together.
His findings were echoed by a local Laramie business owner we spoke to who requested anonymity.
I've seen them together. I know all three of them. They didn't have to lure anybody.
That evening, Aaron McKinney was looking for Matt, and he was kind of on a search.
What was Aaron looking for Matthew for?
Aaron was looking for Matt because that night there was a shipment of methamphetamine coming, and it was a regular shipment. These shipments usually came like every 2 weeks. And in this case, this was being handled by a group of friends of Matt's from Denver. And a few of those people actually were from Laramie and lived in Laramie. A few of them moved back and forth. And so what would usually happen is that shipment of meth, half of it would be dropped in Fort Collins and the other half in Laramie. And so that night, Aaron McKinney was looking for either the 6 ounces of meth or the money if Matthew had already passed it on to someone else. Aaron had also been up on meth for a week.
Another piece of information left out of history's first draft was that Matthew Shepard's murderer wasn't even straight.
Aaron was bisexual. I knew at least that much.
How did you know that?
From other police dealings and kind of compromising positions he was found in and places. The narrative on the hate crime, it's like, yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
Aaron and Matt had relations.
Aaron and Matt had relations?
Multiple times.
How do you know that?
Hearing from people. I've seen them together with my own eyes, acting very friendly. I have not seen them make out. I didn't see them have actual sex, but I know what they were doing.
I have multiple sources that had sexual encounters with Aaron McKinney, whether it was just with Aaron solo or it was a threesome, including a boyfriend of Matt's, who actually had a threesome with Matt, Aaron, and Matt's boyfriend.
Could you maybe walk us through how this initial narrative got laid down?
Sure. There are several things. First of all, immediately after the crime happened, Aaron McKinney and his girlfriend, Kristen Price, they were trying to come up with something plausible that something was done to Aaron and that he was somehow defending himself. It was, an alibi that Matt had hit on him in the bar and then eventually grabbed him in the vehicle. It's a ridiculous idea, this idea of a gay panic defense. That was one thing. There were calls made by friends of Matt's, Walt Bolden and Alex Trout, who began calling gay organizations, first in the Rocky Mountain area, and calling some newspapers and saying, we think that this is going to be swept under the carpet, and we think that it was a hate crime. We think he was targeted because he was gay. Before the police had even begun an investigation, gay organizations were called and the media was called. And so the story got out on Associated Press before anyone knew what had happened.
In Laramie, I found that the story that their town had been host to the most notorious anti-gay hate crime in American history didn't sit right with many of the residents.
Wyoming was never very polarized when it came to how people live or what choices they make. That's what makes the narrative behind Matthew Shepard's murder being a hate crime. That's what makes it so outrageous.
How do you know what was going through Aaron McKinney's head?
Well, I used to supervise in school suspension when he was a student.
What was he like?
He was dark. Like, he didn't have any respect for anybody, including himself. He was just a complete mess. You can see the fence on the ridge line. See where that tank is?
Yeah.
And you can see the silhouette of a fence running up there.
What do you think this crime did to Laramie.
Well, Laramie's a nice place, and it always has been. And I think that it I don't know, it was kind of a black eye and an undeserved one.
There are people who feel that, I mean, even people who will admit that this wasn't a hate crime, but they'll say, well, at least some good came out of this, some awareness of how difficult it is to be gay in America or anywhere, really. What do you think about that?
I actually think that this is one of the least difficult places to be gay, because we deal with everybody on an individual basis. We don't paint with brushes.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Well, I mean, this is the whole thing. It's like, how would you really know, you know?
Well, because I live here.
Yeah, but you're not gay.
Right.
At the risk of oversimplifying, I often felt when reporting this piece that there were two different realities in Laramie, one for gay people and one for everyone else.
I came to college, I did a freshman class with Honors College, and we watched the Laramie Project, and that's where I found out.
Can you remember what it felt like to see that and know that you were going to college in that town? And
when I found out about that, I was still, I had come out as queer, but I was still trying to navigate, my relationship with my parents, so I, told them about it. I was like, how come y'all never told me? Didn't you go to school, shortly after he died? And they were like, yeah, but we think it was, a drug deal gone wrong,
okay.
Whatever.
I see.
And after that, I was like, I don't think that's right. And that was another, cutting off point from my parents where I was like, I can't trust them. Oh, no, I cannot trust them. That's not right at all. So.
How do you know which version to trust?
To me, it didn't matter whether or not drugs were involved at all. It just didn't matter because the excuse that they were trying to use in court to get a lighter sentence was that it was a panic-induced, gay panic-induced. And I was like, that is a horrible. You mean you can get a lighter sentence for for gay panic? What the fuck?
Well, it didn't work.
What? I know, and it didn't work, but to me, because they used that argument, I was like, it doesn't matter whether or not, it just, you're trying to use the excuse that this kid was gay, and therefore he deserved to die? He deserved to be tortured? It didn't click in my head.
I went to Laramie's week-long Pride Fest, where I spoke to people about what the story of Matthew Shepard meant to them.
What's to be had by trying to have this forensic evidence we uncovered that shows that actually it was just about drugs?
Is that worthwhile simply based on the fact that it may be true versus not true?
I think there's a point when you as a person should look around and see, read the room and what has happened. This is really important. What the understanding of what happened to Matthew means a lot to a lot of people. So just leave it alone.
I hear a lot of people saying that it was because of drugs or money or something, but I think at the end of the day there was a bias because of his queerness.
What is it about the story that makes you think that there was bias in it, given that there is perhaps this other explanation?
Mainly just all of the ways I've it's been told to me, when I've heard people talking about it and telling the story at the symposium.
I was hoping to get your opinion on some things. We have one side of a controversy that's been articulated. Could I interview you and give your
If you're making it about controversy, I don't think that that's the message about Matthew Shepard. So no, I don't really feel comfortable with the angle that you're taking, and that's okay, and I respect your angle, but I don't want to be a part of that.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
He's dead. He's been murdered. Why is that important?
Is it not important simply because if it is true, it's a case of believing something true versus believing something not true?
No, you're right. Yeah, you're right. You're right about that. It's hard for me to believe that it wasn't a hate crime, but that's something I could probably broaden my thoughts about. For real, because I don't want to do that either. I don't want to I don't want to be bigoted against somebody or prejudiced against somebody because of a belief system I have that may not be true. So thanks for saying that, actually.
Wow.
That's not something I want to do.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. You're right. I'm not giving it a lot of credence because it doesn't matter to me, but maybe it should. I mean, in the bigger sense. You know what I mean, I hope.
I think the reason it matters to me is that it really changed. If other people from the city are anything like me, it made me think of places like Laramie, places like Wyoming, places like just outside of cities, as places where it wasn't just like not great to be gay, but like dangerous to be gay.
Yeah.
And
right.
And it made me look down on places like this. The Laramie Project came out, made everyone here look like a bunch of yokels. I mean, it cost the town something, this narrative.
Yeah. No, you're right. I had a girlfriend that didn't want to come to Wyoming because of Laramie. So, yeah, I see now. I really appreciate that shift in perspective. I just haven't.
You're gonna make me cry.
Thought of that in that way. No, you too. I really appreciate that. That's very moving to me.
Okay, well, you just made the video. Congratulations.
Get out of here.
After spending most of the day being a fly in the ointment, I felt a new hope. Maybe we can find kindness and tolerance and community without clinging to an old story. Maybe that could free Laramie from being a symbol and just let it be a town of people as fine and as flawed as anywhere else. And maybe instead of making Matthew Shepard into a martyr, we can let him be what he was, a human. Do you feel like Laramie is owed an apology?
In many ways I do, because I think the whole thing, I feel like misrepresented Laramie. I think that what needs to happen is that Laramie needs to be allowed to just move on.
Someone said to me, Ben, you're never going to be able to find a date after this. Because this is like a sacred cow for gay people. They feel like this is, that this is kind of a betrayal.
Well, yeah, you will.
You think so?
Oh, yeah.
That's reassuring. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Do you know anyone?
I probably do, but I may not realize they're gay.
Okay, well, that's my type, so great. Anyone you mildly suspect, just make a list.
Okay.
Yeah.